Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you have been here before, you know that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to explore topics related to living the intentional life. And before we get into this week's spread, which is all ready for us, I'd like to define a term. I'd like to define a term. And that term is boundaries. What do you think of when you think of boundaries, personal boundaries? There are many different ways of understanding or explaining boundaries. Some are healthy, some are considered unhealthy, some are considered to be rigid, some less so. When I think of a healthy boundary, I imagine a cell. The cell of a living, moving creature. Yeah, plant cells are different, but the cell of an animal. All of our cells are very similar if you look closely at them. Do you remember seeing those pictures of cells in your biology books, or perhaps on a YouTube video, or in the news, or in some sphere of your media consumption? Do you remember seeing a picture of a cell? Now, in the center there's a nucleus, and there are things around it, mitochondria, and there's a wall, a thing that protects it, kind of like the shell of an egg. And even when we think of a shell of an egg, that shell and the shell of our cells is porous. It has to be porous. Now, the shell of a chicken egg allows air to come in and air to escape. If it didn't, the embryo within the egg, if there were one, wouldn't be able to breathe. It would die before it could be born. The cells in our bodies are porous. They allow nutrients to come in. The walls of the cells in our bodies are porous. They allow nutrients to come in and matter that should be excreted to go out. A healthy cell wall is porous. A healthy shell egg is porous. Strangely, when psychologists talk about boundaries, they define a porous boundary as an unhealthy one. And that is a term that I think is very poorly chosen, because I believe that what they describe as a healthy boundary is truly a healthy boundary, but that is a porous boundary. What they call a porous boundary is an unhealthy boundary, but I would call that a person with no boundaries, a person who explains everything, says everything about every aspect of their lives, and lets everybody in without any filtering. They call that porous. I would consider that a person without boundaries. To me, a person with healthy boundaries is a person with porous boundaries. It doesn't let everything in or everything out. It doesn't block things from coming in or getting out, also unhealthy. But it's porous. It allows, there is a filter. It's not completely open. There is a filter that allows some stuff to go out and some stuff to come in, some information to go out and some people to come within the sphere of personal space. To me, that, like a cell wall, is porous. Something that is not porous would be something that is rigid, that would not allow anything to go out or to come in. So, when I say a porous, healthy boundary, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a personal boundary that's like a cell wall, that keeps all the stuff that we want inside, because we don't want to spill our guts all over the environment, because not only is that disgusting, but it's also unhealthy. Now, we need our protective skin, but even our skin is porous. It allows stuff to come in and allows sweat and stuff to go out. So, again, when I say porous boundaries, I'm not talking about a person with no boundaries. I'm speaking of a person who has a healthy number of apertures that allows the appropriate information, the appropriate people in, and the appropriate information, the appropriate emotion out. So, if you want to quibble with my choice of vocabulary, do so in the comments below. But from now on, when I say porous boundaries, understand the definition that I am using. Okay? Okay, so now let's get into the spread. I've got it all beautifully laid out. Let me show you. Isn't that a beautiful spread? Yes, I start this section of every video exactly the same. Isn't it a beautiful spread? And I'm sorry, it is. It is. Don't you agree? These cards are gorgeous. They're lush. The colors are so rich and vibrant. Well, three of the decks, the colors are vibrant and rich. One of them, they're soft and deep and watery. And this is an entirely watery spread. Did you notice that? And I deliberately chose this set of cards to work together because for me, they are all very watery decks. And because in about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now, I'm going to be going on a vacation over the ocean, on the ocean. And so I wanted to prepare for my vacation with watery decks. And so I got these decks out. And if you're curious about these decks, I'm very sorry. One of these decks is far out of print and out of stock and almost unavailable unless you find a copy somewhere by luck on eBay. One of them is unavailable. The other 3 are very available. And if you're curious about the decks and who created them, there will be a short clip at the end of this video which gives you that information. And as usual, there will be links in the description box below. And you can use those links to hop over and check out the decks and perhaps buy one or the 3 that are available. You could buy all of them if you want. And remember, I do not get any financial remuneration if you use those links. They're just there for your convenience. I'm trying to be nice. So check them out, really, check them out. These are beautiful decks. And if this is your first time here, let me give you a brief overview of what you just saw. You saw a large spread. There were 3 cards in the center. Those are oracle cards. They give us the main idea, the thesis statement of the spread. If you think of this spread as an essay, that is our introductory paragraph with our thesis statement. And then, around those 3 cards, there were 4 groupings of cards. Yeah? In each one of those groupings, there was an inquiry card, a card with a question on it, and laid on top of that inquiry card, there were 2 tarot cards answering the question. One card from 2 different decks. Again, if you want to know which decks, who created them, there's a clip at the end of this video. So that's what we were looking at. A thesis statement and 4 body paragraphs with a question and answers. Make sense, right? Okay, so we're going to start, as usual, with the central introductory paragraph, thesis statement with the oracle cards. Let's take a look. These are beautiful cards, aren't they? The art is gorgeous, the colors are lush. I can't gush over these cards more than I already have. Now, looking at those cards from left to right, you probably already noticed that the first card was the superb bird of paradise. In the center, we had a dragonfly, and to the right, we had a mandarin fish. So one is obviously an animal of the air, right? The superb bird of paradise, an air animal. One is obviously an animal of the water. The mandarin fish, a creature of the water. What about the dragonfly? What sphere does it inhabit? Is it an air creature, a land creature, or a water creature? If you know dragonflies, you know that it's a creature of two worlds. It's a creature of water and of air. Now, if you don't know, let me explain. The dragonfly emerges from its egg as a nymph, and it spends the first up to 5 years of its life underwater as a nymph. And then when the time is right, around spring or summer, depending on the species and the environment, it starts to transform into its adult dragonfly shape. What does it do? It grabs onto something, becomes rigid, and then cracks itself open from its nymph shell and it emerges as a dragonfly. Very different from a butterfly, which goes into a cocoon and digests itself and reforms itself. The dragonfly doesn't form a cocoon, it just finally bursts forth from its nymph shape. And it's not that long of a process. It bursts forth, and as an adult, it only survives another up to about 5 days. Very short, a very, very short life as an adult insect. A much longer life in the water. So, if anything, it's more of a water creature than an air creature, but let's think of it as both, a water and an air creature. Because it's as an adult, very brief adulthood, that it mates and creates more of its species. So we had an air creature, a water creature, and a creature in between that is both. And so I think this spread wants to begin with the dragonfly. Does that make sense? That makes sense, doesn't it? So the dragonfly. What is the dragonfly in this oracle deck? The keywords are things like thoughts become things, and also transcendence. Yeah, because you can see that the dragonfly transcends from its nymph phase into its adult phase. Now that's a transcendent experience, I suppose. Suddenly being liberated and able to fly in the air. So, transcendence and thoughts become things. This is a time of change. And when I say this is a time of change, I mean the eternal now. Yeah? The now, and then the now, and then the now, and then the now. Every moment is a constant process of change and transformation. Just thinking of our lives in these physical human bodies. From the moment one cell divided, we have been transforming. And that transformation did not stop when we exited the birth canal. That transformation did not stop when we reached the end of puberty. That transformation has not stopped until now and will continue going until we exit these bodies and will continue on after that. Life is a process of constant transformation and evolution, especially if we think of living an intentional life. That is the way we understand and appreciate what life is in this physical universe. Its evolution, its expansion, and its transcendence. So, this card is here to remind us of our continuing process of transcendence, living our lives intentionally. So, we want to pay attention to light and joy and energy. Why? Because it's that light, that joy, that energy that helps us to smooth a sometimes very uncomfortable process of transformation. Imagine the dragonfly realizing its skin was now too tight, too cramped, and that it needed to break free. That breaking free, well, I won't assign my emotions to a dragonfly, but the way I imagine that breaking free process is not a very comfortable process. Yeah, they crack open from the weakest part, which is right underneath their head. They crack open from here and they emerge from this cracked open body, not a shell, but their body. Doesn't sound very easy. But when we focus on light, when we focus on joy, when we focus on positive energy, as much as we can, there will always be times when when our focus shifts in another direction. And that's fine. That's wonderful. That's part of living an intentional life. Because when our focus shifts to maybe the darker side, to resistance, we know something new. We discover something new that we don't want. And all we need to do is bring our attention back to light, back to joy, back to positive energy. Not ignoring, not pretending that the other experience never existed or does not exist. But we venture into the things that we realize we don't want, and then we can shift back into the direction of what we do want, placing new things, new experiences on our powerful current of intention. Remember, our thoughts create our experience. Our thoughts create us. Our thoughts co-create these bodies that we inhabit. Our thoughts create the experience we have in this physical universe. Our thoughts create. Our thoughts shape, explain, form, filter, focus, and create our experience in this physical universe. And so we also want to be aware of where our thoughts are and the direction they're moving in. Not in fear, not in, I don't want to think that, I shouldn't think that, don't think that, but being aware of the thoughts that we're having, knowing that they shape our experience. And without ignoring the thoughts that we have that we don't want, without trying to eliminate those thoughts that we think we don't want, without trying to repress the thoughts that we think that we don't want, we can allow them to be as they are, without giving them energy, without giving them more power to create, and allow them to drift, like leaves on a river, past us. We are still learning. We're still becoming. That's part of living life. That's part of living an intentional life, but it's also part of living life. The moment we stop living, we stop experiencing, we stop transcending and becoming, it's the day we start to stagnate. And stagnation is death. In one way or another, stagnation is death. It's decomposition. It's the beginning and the environment for decomposition, for disintegration. And we don't want to be panicked about, I've got to get going, I've got to keep going, I've got to stop, I can't stop, I can't stop, I can't stop. That's not what we're talking about. It's about allowing the process of growth and learning to occur. Have you ever heard anyone say or present the attitude of, I know it all, I've learned it all, there's nothing new for me to learn, I got this and I'm just waiting for the end? Have you seen people like that? Have you heard people like that? The ultimate of conservatism, if you ask me. The person who will not learn and grow and move forward and transcend where they are. It's a sad thing to see. The other side is not desperately trying to move forward. That's another kind of resistance. That's a resistance to the now. That's a resistance to where I am now. We want to be open and accepting of where we are and know that we are in the process of transcendence, of learning, of becoming. And it's a beautiful process. And it's one that can feel uncomfortable from time to time. And we have tools that will help us, right? We have tools like visualization. We have tools like affirmations. We have tools like a playful, inquisitive mind. Yes, even the Inquirer had a point to teach us. Curious minds want to know. Now, a good curious mind will also be curious about the sources of information, but still, our curious mind is a part of our toolbox. So, the way we transform, the way we move through sometimes, again, we want to acknowledge that our transformation can sometimes be very uncomfortable, can be awkward, like a baby trying to figure out how to walk. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, isn't it? Every moment of our transformation is equally beautiful. Every moment of our evolution is equally amazing and wonderful, and sometimes uncomfortable, and sometimes we fall. And we have tools to help us move through that. The tools I just mentioned, in addition to keeping our attention on joy, on light, on positive energy, on openness. And that's our balancing point. That's our focal point. That is our North Star, the dragonfly. And on one side, we have the bird of paradise, which I don't know if you remember, was this bird that was all puffed up, ready or in the middle of a mating ritual. Now, the bird of paradise, the superb bird of paradise, is a bird where the males will puff themselves up. A lot of birds do this, puff themselves up into this beautiful form with iridescent feathers to attract a mate. So what do you think this card wants to tell us? Is it telling us to be quiet, be shy, stay in the corner, don't move, don't do anything? No. The superb bird of paradise card is here to tell us to put ourselves out there and to get attention and appreciation, and to give attention and appreciation. This card is here to tell us that living the intentional life is not a life of sitting in our chair and expecting everything that we want to come to us without our participation. That's a kind of resistance. A resistance to activity is resistance and closes us off from the powerful power of intention, from the powerful current of our intention. We came into these bodies to be active, to act, to experience, to explore, and to allow what we want to come as we allow ourselves to move in the direction of what we want. And yes, sometimes if we're sitting in the chair, things will come to us. But that's not because we are refusing to act. It's because at that moment we were open enough for ourselves to receive it. But that doesn't mean that we should stay in the chair. Our lives, our beautiful lives, our active lives, lives of experience, and that can include mobility. It doesn't have to include mobility. We're not saying that those who are physically more able than others are living lives that are more intentional. Not what we're saying. You can, I can, we can live active, experiential, participatory lives, whether we are running marathons or we are in a wheelchair or we are lying flat in our bed in a hospital room, but are still interacting with others. Does that make sense to you? We're not being ableist. We're not saying that you've got to be able to run a marathon to live an intentional life. No. Passively sitting on a couch in your living room is not the same as being in a hospital bed because that's what your body is able to do. You can still be active, joyful, interacting, experiencing from your hospital bed, if that's where your body is placing you. That's not the same as being inactive in this framework. You can put yourself out there, be a bright, shining light from a hospital bed, if that's where you have to be, if that's where you are. I know, I've been there. Well, okay. I'm not saying that I was a bright, shining light. That's not for me to judge. But I've been in that hospital bed, unable to move. I was blessed and able to get up again, but I have been in that hospital bed, incapable of moving. Have you? If you have, and you've noticed, and you've been there long enough to notice that there were days when you were down and dark, and there were days where you were not, you'll notice that difference of when you were more active and more sparkly and more alive and more interacting, and times when you were not. So even in that hospital bed, we can open ourselves to interaction and experience and transcendence. Or we can close ourselves down, and sometimes we need to close ourselves down. That's okay. That's okay. But we can open ourselves up again as well. And put ourselves out there, like this bird of paradise, from our hospital bed, from our wheelchair, from our crutches. So this bird of paradise, this, to me, very funny bird of paradise, apparently it's sexy for another bird of paradise, this superb bird of paradise, is here to remind us that if we're unsure of our relationship also with another, or we don't have a relationship, this might also be the time for us to put ourselves out there and to shine, to puff ourselves up, to show what we've got, to flaunt our unique beauty in the world. Whatever your unique beauty is, you can flaunt it without throwing it in other people's faces. That's something different. That's a kind of resistance as well. Yeah? Going out and flaunting your stuff and throwing it in other people's faces, they're completely different things. One is one that I know you're not going to accept me, and here, bam, this is me. It's an act of anger and almost violence. Not almost, violence. But there's the other, I am me, and here I am, and love me for what I am, and if you don't, walk on by. Go if you want. I'm not going to try and force myself on you. I'm not going to try and make you love me, like me, be interested in me, whatever. But I'm going to be me as I am right now. Perfect card for Pride Month, right? Like I said in the last video, let your freak flag fly. Don't whack people in the head with it, but let your freak flag fly. And it could also be that we are in the position of receiving the attention, receiving that dance. And if we are, appreciate it. If people are dancing around us, trying to get our attention, trying to get our interest, appreciate it. That's part of being open to the experience of life. Part of our transformation as well, part of our growth and development, and the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Our joy and our expression of it is contagious. Whether we're doing our dance or we're watching the dance being done for us, our joy is contagious. And the more joyful we are, the more people are going to want to dance for us. Not that we want to manipulate them into dancing for us, but it's just a natural consequence of our joy. Our joy is infectious, and people will dance with us and for us and want to be in our sphere. The more we radiate love and joy, the more who will want to be there and will try to draw our attention. So we want to do what we want to do to feel good about ourselves. That is the key of this card, I think. We want to do what we need, what we want to do, in order for us to feel good about ourselves, because when we feel good about ourselves, then we can radiate that joy. Just like that superb bird of paradise. Show how irresistible we are. And I look at that bird, and right now I laugh. I think it's such a funny thing to do. But for another superb bird of paradise, that is like the sexiest, most beautiful thing in the world, right? You don't have to think that I am the sexiest, most beautiful person in the world. That's fine. There's somebody else out there who does. And I'm not dancing for everybody in the universe. I'm not showing how irresistible I am to make everybody in the universe come towards me. That would be overwhelming, if nothing else. I'm showing my irresistibleness because, one, that's just being open and free and loving of self. And two, because it's my way of showing my interest in you as well. I'm interested in you, and if you're interested in me, let's dance our dance. So that's what we've got on one side, the superb bird of paradise. And on the other side, we've got a balancing card. We've got the mandarin fish. Mandarin fish, the keywords for the mandarin fish are boundaries and discerning. And it's because of this card that I went into that short diatribe of boundaries. Because this card is here to remind us that sometimes, one, our fierce independence can be a form of resistance. And I kind of hinted at that when I was talking about the superb bird of paradise. As we let our freak flag fly, we don't want to bash other people over the head with it. Now, that kind of fierce independence is aggressive and violent. And a fierce independence that is sometimes a form of resistance is something we want to avoid. That angry, aggressive, fierce independence. Not the fierce independence of confidence and self-assuredness, but the fierce independence of walking up into somebody else's face and say, I am me, you have to accept me whether no matter what. Because that's bad. You're a bad person if you don't accept me. That kind of fierce independence. You have to love me because I am beautiful. That kind of fierce independence is a form of resistance. Now, those same words could be said in very different ways. Yeah? You love me because I am beautiful, whether you know it or not. You can accept me because I am beautiful, whether you know it or not. And if you don't know it right now, that's fine. See you another time. That's another way of expressing fierce independence. Not fierce in the sense of aggressive in your face, but fierce as in confidence, self-assuredness, pride, for Pride Month. So sometimes we want to check our independence, whether our independence is a form of pushing people away or opening to them. The fiercely open, independent person isn't aggressive. Not hiding, not shying away, not running away into the corner, but it's not out to get anybody either. So we want to check, are we pushing people away? We also want to check that we have the proper boundaries. Again, in my definition, porous boundaries. Boundaries that don't let all of our internal and experiences, our emotional experiences, every memory that we've had about traumas in the past, not letting all of that out like a fire hydrant in the summer that's been opened for the children to play in, but is overwhelming in the end. Yeah, we want to have proper, healthy boundaries that we let some stuff out at the proper time with the proper people who are open to receiving what we are putting out there, who are interested in receiving what we're putting out there, and are safe. We want to have boundaries that are porous to allow those who we trust and who we believe and who we accept into our private sphere. And allow those people who we do not trust not to push them away, but to bounce off, to flow past. That's what I consider to be a healthy, porous boundary. Stuff can get in, stuff can get out. Not everything. An appropriate amount, a healthy amount, to keep a good balance. And the rest of the stuff can just bounce off and go its own way. We want to follow our guts to be able to discern when to open up the pores and when to close them off. Now, we use our gut and our head. And we have, again, porous boundaries without pushing. Without pushing people away, we can just have the boundary that they'll bounce off of. That's a very different thing. Because our private space is our space for healing, for health, for metabolization. We bring in experiences, we metabolize them, we create what we want, and then we send that desire out into the world. And we have these private spaces for those that we consider to be our dear, close companions, without other people coming in to interfere with that relationship. And those people are not locked into this sphere. Yeah, they come in and they go out, and they come in and they go out. And we're not always dragging them in. We allow people to go out and we allow them to come in. That's a porous boundary to me. And in that space of the boundary, we have so much love. So much love can grow and develop and increase and shine, and then we can radiate that out into the world. we want to find ways of feeling safe in times of stress, in times of sometimes the breakdown. We break down. Living an intentional life, we still break down, and we want to have that space to heal. And to let the love which might have seemed to have shrunk develop again, so that we can radiate it out again into the world. So on one side, we have the superb bird of paradise, which is our flaunting our stuff, our showing our stuff, being open, putting ourselves out there. And then we got the mandarin fish of boundaries, healthy boundaries, where we're not forcing ourselves on others, and we're not dragging other people in, and we're not without boundaries. We've got a good balance of both. And in doing so, then we can fly the path of the dragonfly, of transcendence and evolution and growth. I think this is a beautiful thesis for this spread. We've got 4 questions. Let's take a look at the first one. The first question is, what's the opportunity? Perfect question to come out of that thesis statement of our oracle cards. What is the opportunity? Now, if I were to answer that question right off the bat in one sentence, one word, the opportunity is manifestation. Why do I say that? Well, let's take a look at the cards. The first card you saw was the Chariot. And right next to it, we had the 9 of Cups. Now, the Chariot card in this deck is very similar to Pamela Colman Smith's Chariot card, although instead of having a prince in a very square-looking chariot that doesn't look like it's going to be moving anytime soon, and 2 sphinxes in front, one white, one black, but both sitting on the ground, also not looking very mobile, and looking in different directions. Here we have a very mobile looking chariot, right? We had a sea prince with a trident in their hands, maybe a princess. Okay, I'm not going to say prince, princess, non-binary royalty. There was a royal figure, a young royal figure, in a chariot being drawn by 2 porpoises or 2 dolphins. Yeah? 2 very, very mobile dolphins. They're in the middle of leaping out of the sea and leaping back in. And they are going in different directions. So we still have that idea of there being 2 creatures going in 2 different directions, and the charioteer in the center has the task of getting them going in the same direction. Now, these 2 dolphins, porpoises, are not differently colored. You know, there's not the white one, the black one, the light one, the dark one, but we get that idea of these 2 creatures looking like they're going in 2 different directions. And so the Chariot is the card of willpower in many ways. Yeah? Getting your mind pointed in one direction. Because there are so many aspects of the mind that oftentimes go off in so many different directions. There's the worried one, there's the dreamer one, there's the investigator one, there's the memory one, there's the lusty one, there's the fearful one. All of these aspects of mind, we want to get them all together and pointed in one direction so that we can move along with the powerful current of intention. So it's a card of willpower, but it's also the victory chariot, right? It's the card of victory and success as well. And action. And determination. The determination to move in the direction. The determination to act in the world. And this card follows the Lover's card, which is in the major arcana, Card number six, the lover's card or the lover card, depending on the system. That's a card of choice, right? So after the card of choice is the card of action. I've made my choice, now I'm going to do. And that doing is an act of willpower. Now it's interesting that another idea that's part of this card that I don't usually even consider is jurisdiction. Jurisdiction. What I have, the sphere of judgment, the sphere of making decisions. So the opportunity here is also to make decisions, to judge. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. I judge, and I choose the thing that I want, and I put my attention there, and I allow my chariot, I direct my chariot. I don't move my chariot. I don't get out and pick the chariot up on my back and move it along. I direct my chariot towards that thing that I want. Now, the chariot card isn't one of the willpower in the sense of getting out of the chariot, picking the chariot up, putting the chariot on your own back, and using your own willpower to move it forward. No, it's the chariot of allowing the will to direct the course, not to create the course, not to be the course, but to direct within the course. Just as we living intentional lives, we direct the current of our intention. We aren't the intention. We don't force the intention to move. We don't force ourselves to move within the current. We direct our trajectory, which is the chariot card. And then right next to that chariot card, we have the Nine of Cups. And in the Pamela Colman Smith art, we usually see a portly, gentleman-looking figure sitting on a bench. And behind this gentleman, there is a tall, perhaps table or some kind of elevated wall or piece of furniture with a curtain in front of it, and there are 9 cups. And the figure in front is sitting like this, and it's the card of satisfaction for a lot of people. Yeah, card of satisfaction and comfort and contentment. It's an emotional card. It's the card of water. It's an emotional card. Now it's that I got everything that I want. I've got all my cups of wine behind me, and I'm happy. This is good. I'm content. I'm satisfied. Here we have something different. We have, for one, what looks to be a female presenting mer figure in front of a table. The table's not behind them. The table is in front with the 9 cups. And these cups are glowing with power, glowing with energy. That is not just glowing from the cups, but is swirling up into the water around the figure. It's a very powerful image, right? It's an image of power. So more than contentment, more than satisfaction, more than comfort, this card shows us more. This card shows us perhaps more than even gratitude. Although that I think is an essential component, more than gratitude. This card is often the wish fulfilled card, the wish fulfillment, the wish granted card. I don't usually read it like that. Because I don't believe in wish fulfillment in that sense. I believe in the power of intention. And it's not like this magical, yeah, your wish is fulfilled, like a fairy godmother coming down and tapping. It's just a natural course of living an intentional life. We move in the direction of those things that we want to experience. It's not an intervention of magic. It's a natural flow. But it is a powerful flow. And that key word of intervening magic, it's not intervening magic, but it is magic. There is magic involved, and I think it's that magic that this card is here to show. It's not an intervention of magic like a fairy godmother coming with a magic wand and saying, boom, you're going to the ball. changing your pumpkin into a chariot. Chariot, just had a chariot, right? We are the chariot. We don't need an intervention of magic. We are the magic. We are the magicians. And so, so is this figure in this card. This figure is creating the magic of manifestation. It looks like magic to me. Doesn't it look like magic to you? Not like magic of pulling things out of hats, but magic of things manifesting, power creating. And the key to using, to directing, to pointing the trajectory of this magic, like we pointed the trajectory of the chariot, is gratitude. The power, our magical power, is gratitude based on satisfaction. So we still get that in here. But instead of satisfaction being the result, satisfaction is the beginning. Satisfaction is the platform from which we create, from which we manifest, from which our magic radiates. And gratitude is the magic that creates. We have a platform of satisfaction from which we direct our gratitude into the magic of manifestation. Does that make sense? And that's what this card is here. That's the opportunity. And that's how both the Chariot and the Nine of Cups, I think, interact to create this idea of manifestation from a platform of satisfaction, in gratitude, and we create the lives we want to live, the loves we want to experience, the relationships we want to create, the homes, the environments we want to live in, the art we want to produce. That's the opportunity. And that's the magic of the dragonfly. I think. It makes sense, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Doesn't it? So, we've got a second question, a very interestingly appropriate question. Let's take a look at that. This second question, what could be more perfect? What is my intention? So I have an opportunity to manifest, to create. So what is my intention? What do I intend to manifest? Now, what do I intend to manifest is what I first thought this card was going to be asking, but apparently it's not. Because our answer was different from what I was anticipating. We had two cards, the World and the Two of Swords. We got a lot of swords in this spread, by the way. We have the World and the Two of Swords. Swords are not the happiest suit in the deck, right? If we're going to put them in lineup of happy, I'd probably start with maybe either the Pentacles or, in Rider-Waite-Smith, either the Pentacles or the Cups. You could say one, you could make a case for both. And then maybe the Wands, and then the last would be the Swords. The most painful cards are in the Sword suit to me. And so having a spread full of swords was a little bit surprising. No Pentacles in this spread. We've got Cups, we've got a Wand, we've got a bunch of swords and two majors, but no Pentacles, which is interesting as well. So, back on track. What is my intention? The world. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, the world is my intention. I want the world on a string hanging from a rainbow. I might have messed that up. But anyways, I want the world, right? I want fulfillment. I want completion. I want that integration, that integration of wholeness, where I've had all of these experiences and they're not just sitting around as this experience, that experience, and Oh, I pick up an experience. Yeah, I have this experience, and I show my experience to other people and say, look at my experience, and I put it down, and I pick up another experience and say, look at my experience, look at that, isn't that interesting? That was really painful. But I want to take those experiences and integrate them into one whole. That's the world card. Because until that integration has happened, they're just these random things taking up space in our energetic sphere. We want to integrate them. And when we integrate them, we feel a sense of accomplishment, don't we? That I'm still here. I've been here. I'm still here. I've experienced. I've grown. I've transcended. Transcendence is part of that integration, or a result of that integration process. Sorry, my sweaty elbows are sliding off of the chair. So the world, my intention is to move towards that world, knowing that that world is not an end goal. It's not a finish line. I reach the world to move through a liminal space back into the cycle of new experiences. Perhaps starting from the magician all the way back up to the world again. Now, it's a cycle of experiences, and we have these experiences, and then we integrate them, and then we move on, and we have a new set of experiences. And it's not that linear, right? I could be at a completion or integration phase of one aspect of my life, and in the middle of starting something completely new in another sphere of my life at the exact same time. But still, our intention is to move in that direction. And then once we've arrived at that moment it's not exactly a moment, but once we've done the integration that we have intended, then we move on to the next stage of our evolution. And it's once we've done that integration, once we've had that feeling of fulfillment, of completion, of accomplishment, and we are ready to set out, that we come into the Two of Swords. Makes sense to me? The Two of Swords. For many people, it's this card of impasse, of avoidance, of stalemate, catch-22, you saw in this picture. In Pamela Coleman Smith's art, we see a female presenting figure seated in front of a fairly choppy sea. I believe there are ships there, at least one ship. This figure is blindfolded, holding two swords in their hands, crossed over their chests. And so we get this idea of not being able to completely see, but still having to make decisions. In this card, in this deck, we see competing interests, right? We had two male figures with swords in the middle of duel. Now, is it really a duel to the death, or is it perhaps a fencing exercise? We don't know. So I could see they're in a stalemate. This could be a catch-22. But I don't think that's the direction that this card is pointing us in as an answer to the question of what is my intention. I intend to not be able to make a decision? No. So, it's the card also of weighing up options. I got this choice, and which of these two choices is the one that I want to make? It's the card of making a choice as well. Sometimes difficult, but that difficulty is our own resistance. It's our own resistance to our inner knowing, to our gut instinct, to our gut feeling, to our instincts, to the knowing of our eternal beings that are here, that are us. They're not here, they are us. We are our eternal beings, co-creating these bodies. And sometimes we don't pay attention to the vast expanse of wisdom that is available to us. We get so focused on the problem that we lose sight of the wealth of information that is available to us. So sometimes the choice, it gets difficult, but that difficulty is because of us. And we can release our fear of not knowing, our anxiety over making the wrong choice. We can release that and make a choice. And that, I think, is our intention, to make the choice. Why? Because that's the way that we move into the next cycle. We have that sense of completion, we have that sense of fulfillment, and we make the choice of, this is the direction I want to go in next, and I go in that direction. And if I realize that, no, the direction I thought I wanted to go in is not as cool, as wonderful, as amazing as I thought it was going to be, I can make another choice. But that is my intention, to arrive at fulfillment, integrate, make a choice, and keep on going. Does that make sense? Have you had experiences like that? We all have. Can you bring some of them to mind? And from school, we reach the end of some cycle of schooling, and then we make a choice. What am I going to do when I'm not in school? Am I going to get a job? Am I going to go on a vacation? Am I going to study more? What am I going to do? That's making the choice, right? We do that every moment of every day. So we can also experience that fulfillment and integration at every moment of every day. Does that make sense? Because I think that is possible, and that is our intention too. To acknowledge the fulfillment, completion, and potential for integration at every moment of every day. It is time for the third question. Let's take a look at that. This third question is very interesting. What if I were free? Now, frankly, we are free. We all are free. Do you know that? Do you know that you are free? We are free. No matter how much bondage we experience, we are free. We are so free that we can choose bondage, is what a teaching of one of my favorite teachers. Because bondage and freedom are not so much the physical state, but our mental, emotional, spiritual state. That is the most important freedom that exists. Everything else will follow. If we are spiritually free, if we are emotionally free, if we are mentally free, the rest will eventually follow. So, what if I were free? We have wonderful cards and intriguing and difficult cards answering that question. The first card was the Two of Water, but for a typical Smith-Waite deck, it would be the Two of Cups. And then right next to it, we had the Nine of Swords, a very dark card. If I were free, the Nine of Swords, and we'll get to that in a moment, we'll try and unpack that. But first, let's start with the Two of Cups, because that's a happy card, right? So let's start with the happy card. The Two of Water, the Two of Cups. It's a card in the Pamela Colman Smith's created art. We have two figures, one male looking, one female looking, with two, each holding a cup, raised in toast with each other, and there's a lion's head with wings above them, and a caduceus above them. And it's the card, it's actually even more than the Lover's card in the Major Arcana. This Two of Cups card is the love card of the deck for most of us. The love card. And here, instead of two people holding cups up and looking like they're toasting their love, we have two jellyfish. But you'll notice, did you notice that they were, okay, a little bit gendered, if you ask me, a little bit stereotypically gendered. One was pink and one was blue. Okay. But anyways, they had their two little tentacles raised up and intertwining. So a little bit like the Caduceus, like the two snakes of the wrapping themselves around the pole, the wand. Here we have two jellyfish with two tentacles winding around each other, and it's still like we get the idea of love. Yeah, unified love, the love of unification of partners, of romantic love, of partnership, of mutual attraction. It could be sexual attraction, but more than sexual attraction, it's emotional attraction, the love attraction. So it could be romantic, but it doesn't have to be romantic. It could be the attraction to a friend, the attraction to a mentor, the attraction to feeling comfortable working with a coworker, the attraction to I said friend, right? So it's also the card of friendship and affinity, agape. Greek has 5 different words for love, and I just remembered that, and I'm not going to try and remember all of the 5 words. There's eros, which is erotic love. There's the one for agape, which is the love of hospitality. There's a love of philios, the love of brotherly love. There are 2 more. Anyway, so there are 5 different. There's a love of hobbies, that kind of love. Anyways, there are 5 kinds of love. Parental love. And this card is all of those. And they're all different. You wouldn't want to confuse your love of your parents and children with your love of your erotic love. That gets you into trouble. Ask Electra and what was her brother's name? The most famous one. Goodness, I remember Electra, but I'm suddenly forgetting his name. Syndrome. The Syndrome. I'll put a subtitle here, I guess. That is so funny. Okay. So, let me keep talking. So you don't want to confuse your love of your parents and your erotic love, right? Oedipus. There we go. Oedipus syndrome. Don't need to put the card down there. That's the name. So we don't want to confuse those. But they're all expressions of kinds of love, right? So if I were free, I would love. I would put myself out there like the superb bird of paradise, and I would love. Unified love. And then we got this 9 of Swords card. Scratch his head. 9 of Swords card. In Pamela Coleman Smith's art, we have a figure having been lying in bed, apparently, at night. It's a very dark background card. It's got a black background. This figure is in their bed, having sat up, holding their face. There are 9 swords apparently on the wall behind them, from our perspective. And this is the card of nightmares, of anxiety, worry, fear. We assume the figure has woken up from either woken up from sleep and a nightmare and is feeling anxious, or hasn't been able to get to sleep because they're so worried and anxious and frightened. So the card of anxiety, worry, fear. Also sometimes grief, that haunted feeling. It can be insomnia. It can be actual nightmares. Is that what we expect if we are free? I don't think that's what this is telling us. It's not telling us that love and be frightened and worried and have nightmares and don't go to sleep. I don't think that's what this is trying to tell us. You see in this card, we have a figure in a tent at the edge of the sea. There's a short cliff, and the tent is being pinned down by 9 swords. Actually, those swords probably in this instance are beneficial. They're holding the tent in place. Instead of having tent pegs, this person decided to use swords. You do you, boo. But you see that the figure inside of the tent is doing this, right? Why are they doing this? Because below. Now, whether the person knows that this is coming from below, but below there is a mer person, probably a siren, singing a song. And the figure is trying to block that song out of their ears, not to listen to it. Because traditionally, in mythology, the sirens are the ones who sing to the sailors. They lose their sanity, and they run their ships against the rocks, and they sink their ships, and they drown and die. That is the purpose of a siren in ancient mythology, to get sailors to correct their ships by singing pretty songs and getting them all distracted. And so the figure in this card is trying to keep that song out of their ears. But what if we were free? What if we were free to listen to the song without being distracted by it to the point of self-damage, self-harm? But what if we were free to listen to the song openly? What might we realize? What if this figure were free, were able to take their hands away from their ears and gaze down upon the one who is singing? Might not that fear dissipate? It's just this, this whole deck is mer people. So a mer person is not necessarily a dangerous, frightening thing in this deck to me. This is the mer person's world. This is the world of that figure in the water who is singing. That is actually the star of the show. The siren is the star of the show. And what if that person above were to take their hands away from their ears, were to release their worry, their fear, their anxiety, and were to look down openly, freely? What might they see? What might the relationship be? Might there be a connection? Might this actually be a love song that is being sung? I think if we were free, we would be able to face our fears and decide whether this thing that is singing to us is singing actually a song of kill yourself or is singing a song of love. And I think it's possible that some of the things that we are worried about or anxious about or are grieving, or that bound up, constricted feeling that we are feeling in response to something, either internal or external, if we looked at that, sometimes we might realize that we are resisting something that we actually want. We're resisting something that might actually benefit us, might actually be good for us, might actually be the instigation for our transformation and our evolution. So if I were free, one, I would be open to love, experiencing love, and I would be open to looking at that which I am creating anxiety over, that I am creating fear over, that I am creating worry over, that I am resisting. And if I look at it, then I can make a clear decision. And And I might realize that this is something that I actually want. I might realize that this is something I don't want, and instead of being so wrapped up and bound up by it, I can do something to get around it. I can let my flow of intention move around an obstacle. But it might not be an obstacle. It might be a door that I want to walk through. But I'm scared because I've never seen that door before. I've never seen it. I don't want to look at it because it's new, it's scary, it's different. I don't know. I hear this song and I don't. No. Other people told me the song is dangerous. No. But if I were free, I would be able to look at what was creating that song and make a decision. Does that make sense? And I used this card, this Nine of Swords card, for my second video of this week. Now, probably you know this. If you are a returning visitor, you probably know this already. But every week I do 2 videos, at least 2 videos. This one and one more, in which I use Terre de Marseille or antique Italian cards to answer a question that I pull out of this larger spread. And the question that I pulled out of this larger spread came from this Nine of Swords card in relation to what if I were free. So if you'd like to see that video, make sure, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button and click the bell for notifications so you know when I upload that video. It'll be coming probably about 24 hours or so after this one is uploaded. Just a heads up. Okay, so if I were free, we've got a 4th question. Let's take a look at that. The 4th question is wonderful. What is possible? What do you think? Isn't that a perfect question for the end of this reading, for the end of this whole spread? Now, for just a moment, let's review. How did we get here? We started off with the oracle cards, right? We started off with the dragonfly. We want to remember that our thoughts become our experience, our thoughts shape our experience, shape us. And so we want to be ready for transformation, for transcendence. And to do that, we want to balance 2 aspects of our lives. We want to balance, 1, putting ourselves out there, getting out there, and showing ourselves off. Not aggressively, not to club other people over the head with who we are, but just to be us. Fully us. And also allow other people to be them, and those who are singing and dancing their dances for our attention, appreciate that. We balance that with our desire for healthy boundaries. And again, we don't want to go out there and bash other people over the head with our independence and our idea of self. And we also don't want to be letting all of our emotional stuff flood over everybody in every circumstance. We want to have good boundaries. In my definition, porous boundaries, where we can open up the pores and let out what is appropriate to be let out at the appropriate time with the appropriate people in the appropriate environment, a safe environment, safe people, interested people. And we're able to shut the pores and not spill our guts all over everybody at every moment of every day. Nor do we let everybody come in willy-nilly. No, we trust our gut. We let the people in that we want to let in. We let the people that we don't want to let in bounce off of us. So we got a good balancing act going on. And then we have that dragonfly, able to transcend, transform, become, experience, grow, shine. Be the light in the world. And so the first question we asked was, what is the opportunity? The opportunity is to manifest, from a platform of satisfaction, and in using the tool of gratitude to direct our course of intention towards what we want to manifest. And what is my intention? Now, we directed ourselves in the course of intention. What is my intention? My intention is to arrive at completion, fulfillment, integration, and make a choice and keep going. So what if I were free? If I were free, I would be free to love. To wrap my little tentacle around somebody else's little tentacle. Well, I just went into a very different place. But to wrap my hand around the hand of another and walk through life with that person or those people. And if I were free, I would look at those things that I'm trying to resist, I'm trying not to look at. Because I'm scared, because I'm worried, because they give me nightmares, because I'm grieving. I'd be able to look and discern. And some of those things might actually be what I really want for my transformation, for my growth, for my next step. And some of those things I don't, and I know that I can move around them, move past them, move beyond them. So what is possible? I'm free now, what is possible? 6 of air. 6 of swords in Rider-Waite-Smith, in the Smith-Waite deck. 6 of swords, the 6 of air, and the 2 of wands. Again, another sword, I know. 6 of air, very similar to Pamela Coleman Smith drawn art, similar to my eye. We have a boat, we have a fairy person. I don't mean fairy like fae, but like a fairy man, fairy woman, a person who moves a boat for another person. Now there's the fairy person moving the boat, and instead of perhaps a parent and a child riding the boat with their 6 swords, we have 6 seagulls riding in this boat. Like, these seagulls can't get to the other side on their own, so they've got to get this, they paid off this ferryman to get them to the other side of the bay. I'm sorry, just what are they doing? What is this person moving this boat for these seagulls doing? Be that as it may, the card of transition, moving beyond, moving past the mental emotion, the mental turmoil that we've experienced. It comes from the 5 of swords, right? The 5 of swords was the winning at all costs, doing verbal battle, doing mental battle. So now we move past it. We've either won, lost, or drawn a truce in a battle, and now we move on. Transition away from that conflict. Change. Rite of passage. For some people, this is a journey or a pilgrimage card, which I can see. Some people even see this as a death card. The ferry person on the river Styx transporting souls from the world of the living to the world of the dead. That's not how I see this card, especially not in this reading. So what is possible? What is possible is that we can release the baggage that is ready to be released. You don't have to carry all of the swords in the ship. We carry the swords that are beneficial for us. We can let the baggage go and move forward in our lives. Now we can transition from rocky, turbulent water into smooth, clear, smooth sailing water. Reaching for a cliche, smooth sailing water. And then right beside that, we had the 2 of wands. Beautiful card. I love this card in this deck. One of my favorite cards on this deck. We see a mer person, I think a merman to me, from behind. very nice behind, if you ask me. And they've got these two wands in the water, very reminiscent of Pamela Colman Smith's art. In Pamela Colman Smith's art, this is the top of a castle, but this is a mer person who has risen up from the water with these two wands, looking over at a mountain. It looks like a volcano that is smoking, but still, this figure is appraising their future. Where I know what I want to do, what do I do now? Where do I want to go? How do I want this to happen? What is possible? So this is a card of future planning. It's a card of progress, but not the progress of the three. The three is where you actually start taking the first steps of bringing your passion and intention into fruition. The Two of Wands is the progress of planning, the planning progress. Making decisions. Planning a course. Discovery of possibilities. Aspirations. It could be aspirational as well. So we move on and we start planning our future. That is a possibility. That is the possibility, is it not? That is the eternal possibility. We move on from the experience we just had, like the world, moving and making the mental decision in the Two of Swords. Here we have the Six of Air moving forward, leaving the baggage behind, moving forward and planning our course. There's an echo here between that second question and the answer to the second question and the answer to this fourth question. The second question, the world and the Two of Swords. Here we have the Six of Swords and the Two of Wands. Planning our course. And that's what's possible at every moment of every day, especially if we are free. And we're free to let the baggage go and move forward. And that's living an intentional life. Open, free, letting our freak flags fly, letting our dragon fly. This is a beautiful reading, I think. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. And in just a moment, there will be a short clip again giving you the names of the decks and the creators. There are links below you can also check out. And friends, hit the like button if you're still with me so that more eyes are drawn to the channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed and hit the alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. And share this. You can copy this link and share it in other platforms so other people that you think might appreciate this can see it. And comment below. I would really love to hear from you. I love interacting with people who like interacting with me. And I hope you want to interact with me. I'd love to interact with you. And if you want a private reading, just letting you know, there will be a link below. You can go to my Instagram page and send me a direct link, a direct message from there. Unfortunately, I don't have the capability to open up direct messaging here on YouTube. I do in the Instagram. So go over to Instagram, send me a message. We'll work out a private reading for you. What to suit your needs. It could be a short, long, whatever you want. And as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.